Hi, my name's Dean. This is my channel Gamecube for Life, covering all things Gamecube and retro. Many people struggle with finding the perfect Gamecube power list. Some struggle with what is the right triangle to collect for me, and also have I got everything that's required or everything that came with my game. If those are problems that you've struggled with, then stay tuned and I'll go through my PAL collection list. Well, since completing my PAL set, I realised how hard it is to gain information, and a lot of people, when I said I was putting together a list, have asked to have a copy. So what I've done is I've put together this list. Now, the link to this list is going to be in the description, so you can have a look and see it on your phone. But to get yourself set up, it's best to start off using a computer, but it can be done on your phone as well, and it's really useful on the phone when you're out and about. Now, what I wanted to do is put together a list. I know there are some out there like Retro Collect, but for me it was limiting. It didn't tell me quite a lot. If I knew that it was available in Germany and the UK, I didn't know, was it going to be an EUR, was it going to be an EUU, was that a separate UKV or German version? So that's why I wanted to document what I was after very early on. Now, you might be thinking, how many games are actually in a Gamecube PAL set? I've got the number set at about 453. Now, a few of you out there might be disagreeing with that number, and that's fair. The PAL set number is whatever you think it is. It's your collection. You're happy. Some people might regard my 453 as incomplete, but what I don't do is I don't include the copious numbers of Mario Kart, with Zelda, not to be sold separately. So that is one thing, and I consider this a little bit of a almost like a base set as a starting point. If you do this, you'll get your full set, and if you want to get all the various covers, then you can do so. And for those who want to do that, I've added those onto the bottom, or I've started to. Now this is version 1. This will progress, and eventually there'll be a tab on the bottom which will show the different versions as I guess updated. So a couple of things just to point out with this list. Now, a lot of people agree with me that the 2 games in 1 should be added into the list. It should also have, I include the demo for Star Wars 3, and the reason for that is because it does have the original Star Wars Atari game on it, so it's a full game that you can get by getting the demo, so that's why I include that on the list. R Racing as well. Within this list I have the version with Pac-Man Versus, because it's the only way you can get Pac-Man Versus on PAL, because it was only released in America and possibly Japan. And I've also gone for the Wind Waker limited edition just because it has the extra disc in there. And a lot of people always forget, so when they think of the number, they seem to forget about TMNT as well, which was a German exclusive. It gets missed a lot, so just be aware that that's in the list as well. Eventually, when I update the list, and this has been in the community for a while and a few people have had a chance to have a look at it, and I confirmed this right, then I might actually start documenting and putting pictures of all the actual releases, so you'll have that as well. So the first thing you want to do is you'll want to make a copy. So you'll go up here to File, and you can see Make a Copy. It will look slightly different on the phone, but what you can do is once you make a copy, you will need a Google account to save that to your Google Sheets. And it does work a lot better on the Google Sheets app as well. What you'll also be able to do is, once you have downloaded, you'll be able to start inputting your own stuff on there. So as you scroll down, you can see all the titles, and it does actually keep a count here of games that you've ordered, games that you own, the number. Once you save a copy, you can adjust this, and I have actually put in a column there for cost and value, so you can keep a track of how much you spend, which is useful in the early days, but if you're halfway through a collection, it might be a bit harder to go back. I should also mention within that list, this only includes licensed games, so I haven't included the Max Play game just because it's non-licensed. If you want to, you can cut and paste, add that in, entirely up to you. And again, if there's some of these columns that you don't want, you can delete them. Now, what I should say before you start deleting things, it's always worthwhile maybe running it for a while just to see what you do and don't want, just because it's always a bit harder to add it back in later. Now here we have is this column here, which is own. Now what I've done is I've set this up so that as you order games, you can add them here. Now this orange band is quite useful, because if you're out and about and you're looking at it on your phone, you'll be able to just flick through on your phone to see what's been ordered and what you actually own, and that can then highlight on your phone as well. Makes it nice and pretty, nice and green. Once you have your title, you can then click which one you have, so that you can keep a track of the one that you picked up. For instance, I've got not particularly this game, but I've got a game where it was released on with an English back on EUR, but there was a UKV version. At some point I might decide to upgrade, well not upgrade, but get the UKV version, because that's typically what I collect. At the moment I've got this set up for UK collectors. I've started with Australian, and I've got a few people who I know who've got full sets, who are going to be adding the Dutch and FAHs for French and Dutch, and also got French. And in the future I might also look to add Italy and also Spain. But as you can imagine, this has taken me a year to get this far. There is a lot of information. So now we're on VIP cards. For those who don't know what they are, VIP cards are actually cards that came with the certain games. Some had silver foil to scratch off to reveal a code, and that code would then be used to claim certain items from the Nintendo store. There are various different ones, so like the one I've just shown you, which had actual game art. There are also some that were just generic, so you had the Pikmin one, which had Wave Race and Luigi's Mansion on it, and there are a couple that look very similar to this but actually do have different pictures. So for instance, one that jumps out is Eternal Darkness, which does actually have a different picture on there, as you can see in the window. So I've tried to show generic with a little mark just to show you that there is game art or so on. There are a couple of game art ones as well that don't actually have foil on them. So Smash Brothers is a good example where it's got game art but it doesn't actually have the actual silver foil on it. As you collect them, so as you pick up games, you can stipulate you've got a sealed version, it's missing, or you've got it, or you might have it but it's actually, it's unscratched, which will give you, nice green there, or it could be missing, and or you might just have it as scratched. Now I've just created some colour codes there just to show you the difference. So if you come across one in the wild, then you might think, oh, I haven't got that, so I'll just pick that up. I think the biggest issue I had was just finding out which ones actually did have scratch cards, and it took a lot of time going through certain lists and trawling through eBay and so on just to get that information. But again, if you're not interested by VIP cards, if it's not particularly of any interest to you, then you can just delete those columns. Now moving on, I've got a couple of columns here for condition, so I've left these in because I found them really useful. So if I had a game that was really rare that was missing the manual, then it will show up red. It's not actually working at the moment, but eventually I'll go and work on the formatting just to make sure it's just that top line, it looks like. So if you're missing something in particular, or you've got a really poor condition disc but it's barely works, then you can keep a track of the stuff that you want to replace later on. You're happy to keep it for now, but again, if you've got an acceptable one, gets by, good, green. My goal is to get everything at least good. Having now got the power set, I've got a couple of things, well, maybe not good, but I want to get away from the poor. I've got a couple of poor things, and I've got quite a lot of immaculate, and I've got one sealed game. I did have two, but I opened one. Also, if you're collecting bundles, it might be handy to have this tested column. So if you've tested it, if you're buying in lots, you haven't got time to play every single game. So it's good just to keep, put it in, test it, play it a little bit, just make sure it works. I've had discs that are immaculate, not a mark on it, and they won't play. And then when you look at it in the light of day and you hold up to light, you can see the tiniest little scratch just on where it picks up, and it won't play. I've had it cleaned. So if you're buying in bundles, test every single one. Don't just do a visual inspection, and that's quite useful. Covered off the cost and value, which don't need to really go on about. And then we have the game contents. Now, if I was to single out what I've spent the most time on, it will be this. Within the actual games, you've got the black consumer booklets. You might also get a Nintendo ad if it was a first party game. So we can look here. We have this one that was laid out, which is Euro 2. And some are particularly hard to get. So a good example would be if we have a look down at Fire Emblem. So Fire Emblem had its own Nintendo ad. Now this isn't the best of pictures because I've been rushing near the end, but as you can see with the artwork down there, this particular Nintendo ad actually had Fire Emblem stuff in it. It's the same with Battalion Wars. It has an advert for particular Game Boy Advance game, so it's not one you can pick up with another game. A lot of the first parties you can, but those particular games have their own Nintendo ads, so it's quite hard to track down. What I've also done is, if I go back to the consumer booklets, now what a lot of people say to me, I've had a few people who have PAL sets who have checked this with me over the time. So thanks for Chris, Richard and Stuart for helping me with all your support and putting up with my nagging. But going through those sets and go through eBay, you can see that you could go through every single game and most will have the exact same consumer booklet in there. There might be a time where the game was released for a long time, and then maybe two, and in those circumstances you can typically see that. So I'll document it as Euro 1 or Euro 2. But don't take this as written. You might open your case, and if you've got Euro 2 in my list is saying Euro 1, if you're happy with that, then just leave it. I think this is better if you open your case and you don't have a consumer booklet in there. Then you can look at this and say, Dean says it's a Euro 1, so you can stick one of those in. If you are what I class as a completion set collector, if you want it to be exactly as it was when you open the case, that's what I've tried to do. It is very painful, so be very careful before you go that route. Even more painful is probably looking at the other items. Now, within the games there were postcards, so THQ would either have a black and white one, or they would have a white one that actually named the game on the bottom. I haven't put pictures of that just because there's only so many hours in the day, but I've tried to document on there the different postcards, any adverts that came. But when I do eventually take pictures and that column gets added to this, you'll then be able to see what's there. There's a lot of this I don't actually have. A lot of the infogames or infogrames, what they're called, blue postcards I'm missing. One thing I should point out with that as well is you may see a lot of Atari postcards in with Sega games, for instance. It's only because a distributor had the distribution rights for Atari, so that's why that doesn't always make sense, but that's why it happened. There is also a couple of items. For instance, we have the Bratz Diamonds, which came with a top trump card, so that will potentially be in there, and I've documented that on the actual spreadsheet as well. And yeah, there are a few cards, adverts. I've tried to document where there's stickers, so you might pick up FIFA thinking it's complete, it's got everything, but then you notice that someone's changed the case and you've lost the FIFA hologram on the front. So again, I've tried to include that. I've put some details there as when games were released, and also some of the specs in relation to what you can expect in picture quality as well, widescreen, PAL 60 and so on. So if you're playing for a monitor like I do, it can be quite useful. I've also got my Twitter on here, so if you've got any feedback, then you can leave it there or leave it on the YouTube video. And I'll also try and post this video on the spreadsheet as a guide. I have also included the big boxes. So at the moment I haven't got the pictures, but eventually I'll look to put pictures there of all the different big boxes. So you've got the big Mario dance mat, which you'll see with my initial video. The bongos box sets. Then you've got what I class as the core big boxes, which would be Final Fantasy, Zelda, Mario Party 6 and 7, which are the 5 core games, and Zelda was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of being a dama. You've also got another dance mat which was released with that was a power release, so a lot of people see the North American box, but it was actually released with a power box. So I've seen a couple on eBay, and I don't think people realise how rare those are, so might be worthwhile picking one of those up if you get the chance. And also you have here the Australian and Mario Party 4, which I don't own. So Mario Party 4 came with a controller, and Pokemon box came with just a game and a GBA cable, very similar to the American one, but we got this nice one for Australia, which is not bit or anything. Cheers. And this was a picture of Michael's, who's on our group within Facebook, so thanks for that, Michael. And then at the bottom, this is probably the most incomplete part of this spreadsheet. I've tried to start listing all the different variables. Now, some people, if I go back to earlier about the actual PAL number of 453, a lot of people include all the Mario Karts, all the Pokemon Colosseum, not to be sold separately, with the memory card. I've included the memory card version on the list, but there are many different versions. So as I mentioned earlier, the initial list is just like a base list. If you want every game, that's the way to do it. What I've also included here is all the additional covers. So NBA had a copy for Italy and Spain, a copy for UK, a copy for France. So there's 3 different covers, different basketball players on the front. For Fun Night Round 2, you've got 2 different boxers, Ricky Hatton, and I can't remember who the other one, I think he's an American boxer. WarioWare has a different cover for Australia. The Dutch version of ATV 2 has a different cover. Again, a lot of it was Australia having different covers, and also occasionally dotted around you might have not to be sold separately when they came with a console, or possibly you have the limited edition for Europe, and you have a limited edition for Australia for Zelda Wind Waker, just slightly different. So if you want to collect everything for PAL, then that's where you can collect those additional games. Now it goes without saying, there may be areas within this, there's about myself, I put a lot of time and effort and so many hours into creating this. So I can't say that it's going to be 100% right, but what I will say is if you have any feedback, if you think there's something wrong or something that that's missing, then just give me some feedback and I'll have a look into it. This is always going to be a document for the community. It's always going to change, and I'm just trying to help people collect because I love Gamecube and I think that the more people collect it, the better. And I'm also making up for selling it for a PS2 back in the day. Never lived that down. So thanks very much for watching. The links in the bottom. If you have any questions, as I said, just let me know. I will be on Reddit under Gamecube for Life, and I'm also on the Gamecube Collectors group on UK on Facebook as well. So yeah, all the best and happy collecting.